Week 2 of Pantheon is here, and with it comes a brand new challenge in Oryx Exalted. This is a -10 power version of the bosses that we had from last week, including Golgoroth, Caretaker, Explicator, and atraks, with the newly revamped Oryx encounter being added to the end of the gauntlet. Since I was out of town last weekend and owe you guys a breakdown from week 1, today I'll be covering the best loadouts for all 5 encounters, including the best weapons to use, some quick tips to make your runs more consistent, and a full breakdown of the Oryx encounter at the very end to make your runs as smooth as possible. These loadouts and strategies helped me get 36 Guardians their clears last week, so hopefully this knowledge helps you guys as well. I'm Above, and if you enjoyed today's video, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now, let's get into it. Starting things off, we have a few high-level notes on Pantheon itself. The weekly weapon surges do in fact rotate week to week, while the individual modifiers stay the same for each unique Pantheon challenge. You can also select the Pantheon challenge of your choice via the Into the Light node at any given time. As far as I'm aware, conditional finality is not yet available this week via the exotic quest, so stay tuned next week for more information regarding that. Last week we had Void and Strand Surge, which meant that Edge Transit and Cataphract were the go-to damage options. But now that Solar and Stasis are the weekly surge, our loadouts are going to change pretty substantially. Additionally, for the sake of giving everyone that watches this video an even number of options, my recommended team comps will include 2 of each class to ensure that everyone has options available to them. Starting with Golgoroth, you're gonna want 2 Golden Gun Hunters with Celestial Nighthawk and a Lucky Pants swap ready to go as your primary source of DPS. We'll also be utilizing 2 Well of Radiance Warlocks to take turns exchanging the gaze, while also providing safety to your teams in the damage pools. It's important to note that you actually want to avoid popping a well in the first pool to ensure that your Golden Guns hit for maximum damage, which allows you to save your super for later pools that have far more adds attacking you. Your Titans can rock the Pyrogale gauntlets this week to take advantage of the weekly surge, but it is worth noting that this super can stagger Golgoroth and cause him to turn his crit spot away from your team. In terms of DPS weapons, I recommend Warden's Law and Apex Predator for your hunters, and either Whisper or Rockets with Galahorn for the rest of your fire team. With that said, losing Golgoroth's gaze is often the #1 cause of wipes, which is why I recommend that 4 people do DPS while 2 people are fully dedicated to the gaze. Though you can min-max damage with your gaze holders running Tractor, it really isn't necessary with the free solar debuffs we have at our disposal this season. And as we climb towards higher power levels of the contest gauntlet, 1 phases are going to be far less common, so coming equipped with a machine gun to handle Axion darts and ad clear is absolutely the play. It's also worth noting that sniper rifles are fantastic for instantly taking Golgoroth's gaze, which allows your team to continuously damage for all 6 pools. Next up, we have Caretaker, and if you haven't min-maxed damage on Caretaker in the past, knowing how and when to push your damage is the difference between achieving platinum score and missing it altogether. The platinum timer is just 8 minutes, which means you essentially have to 2-floor Caretaker if you want your weekly adept weapons. So understanding how to manage the plates is extremely important. Burst damage is the key to success here, with Pyrogale and Nighthawk being top picks yet again. Lucky Pants, Rockets, and GLs are all extremely strong here, but understanding when to use them will help you beat this encounter within the dedicated time limit. For the damage itself, the first plate should be focused solely on weapon damage, while the third and final plate is reserved for damage supers. This means we can pop a well on the first plate and go hard with DPS to get as close to the golden damage gate as possible without surpassing it. Because when you cross this threshold, you have just a 4-second window before the boss becomes immune and teleports away, and we want to use these 4 seconds to our absolute maximum capacity to ensure we're doing as much damage as humanly possible. So we use the first 2 plates to get as close to the health gate as we can, then hop on the 3rd plate and use our damage supers to chunk Caretaker for an easy 2-floor kill. I've tested this on both Pantheon rotations and can confirm it's still completely doable even at -10. Next, we have Explicator, which in my opinion is one of the most difficult bosses of the entire gauntlet. This encounter has some of the biggest changes overall, as the flame tornadoes now track all 3 plates during DPS and even appear on the outer plates when swapping planets. This can deal a surprising amount of damage and will likely insta-kill guardians on contest level difficulty. To avoid this, simply pre-pop a well in between all 3 plates, then dip in and out of the corresponding buffs after the fire tornadoes have passed. Our team comp and loadouts are almost identical to Caretaker, as your damage window is extremely short here as well. I personally use Parasite in this encounter to supplement my Lucky Pants damage, but any solar burst DPS weapon will do. It's also worth noting that Indebted Kindness is a fantastic neutral game weapon in just about every encounter, as it has great ammo economy and one-shots most trash mobs. Keep in mind that a Tormentor will spawn after successfully swapping your planets, so coming equipped with precision weapons to kill it as quickly as possible is highly recommended. You also have the option to leave it alive and let it despawn when the damage begins, but I don't recommend this, especially as the gauntlet becomes more challenging in future weeks. For DPS, we're gonna pre-pop a well in between the 3 plates as we discussed earlier, then grab the corresponding buff, head back to the well, and do a 3-2-1 countdown with your team. Once you begin damaging the boss, you have limited time to deal damage, so you'll want to coordinate with your team as much as possible. If you find yourself struggling to reach the platinum threshold even with a 2-phase clear, there's a lot that can be done to speed up the rest of the core mechanics. The Centurions that spawn next to Explicator should always be priority number 1. These enemies need to die as quickly as possible to spawn the corresponding Colossus on your plate, which will give us the intel we need to swap planets into their proper locations and get to DPS faster. With that said, a solar tornado will randomly spawn on one of the outer plates, so make sure you guys pick up your buffs around the same time, call out the tornado's location for safety, and you'll be through this encounter in no time. Next, we have Atraks 1, the Week 1 Pantheon final boss. Now, I know I've been harping on burst damage for several of these bosses, but this one requires the highest burst damage by far. Your hunters are going to switch over to Blade Barrage with Star Eater scales and use Ember of Beams as a fragment, which gives your super projectiles insane tracking for consistent damage. Your Warlocks are going to swap over to either Needle Storm or Nova Bomb, and your Titans are going to run Thunder Crash with Cuirass of the Falling Star. Even though it's Solar Surge this week, Pyrogales just aren't that good here because they don't have the full time to detonate the super and deal full damage. For our weapons, we're gonna stick with Parasite, which was already insane last week and is even better now with the weekly Surge. If you guys don't have this available, Grand Overture is a solid substitute, but you may not one floor, so simply keep that in mind. This means that the rest of our weapons can be tailored to ad clear and general survivability. Before we get to damage, leave a Servitor alive on both the top and bottom floors, as this prevents the spawn of a Tormentor altogether. This also gives you extra time to build your Worm's Hunger and Feast of Light stacks, but does prevent you from using the terminals to exchange the buff should you fail to one-floor atraks. However, one-phasing this boss isn't too difficult, especially with the current power delta and surges this week, and you can always send your scanner downstairs in the elevator to break the second replication if needed. You'll want to start the fight by splitting 3 and 3 to get your Worm's Hunger stacks, then have all 6 players go upstairs once you've obtained the Operator buff. You'll then group up, wait for the text in the feed to indicate that damage has started, and have your scanner find the correct replication. Before starting your 3-2-1 countdown, have your hunter throw knives at the boss to make everyone radiant, while your Nova Bomb Warlock debuffs Atraks with their Void Grenade. For some reason, this is the only debuff in the game that works against Atraks and can help a lot with your one-floor potential. Then give a 3-2-1 countdown, start by firing your ×20 parasites, and then immediately cast your supers. And just like that, you should have an easy one-floor kill. For final stand, I highly recommend swapping to Lament, as it is much better than Uncharged Parasite for damage, and Atraks should be a GG. The new boss in this week's Pantheon rotation is Oryx, and this encounter easily has the biggest changes out of anything we've seen so far. The initial knights that spawn on each plate are now mini-bosses. There are now 3 rounds of Light Eater knights in total that spawn each time someone is taken by Oryx, and if you end up fighting the Echo of Oryx inside the Taken Dimension, there are now multiple copies. And how can we forget the Tormentor that spawns during DPS? Luckily, the Surge is very friendly for Oryx this week, and our loadouts are going to take care of everything we just mentioned. If you want to make it simple, just run a couple Celestial Nighthawks and 5 Whisper of the Worms for an easy 2-phase. The nice thing about this encounter is the fact that you're immune during DPS and don't even really need a well at all. With that said, we used one well with Lunafaction boots to extend the weapon range of our hunters, who made Celestial Nighthawk Lucky Pants swaps during damage. But the key here is actually using a tractor cannon on Oryx's claw when he slams the plate to begin the bomb detonations. Simply tractor the claw, head back to the immunity bubble at the center of the arena for safety, and your Nighthawks will hit for more than 600,000 a shot, while your Whisper hits for more than 100k per shot. You can then reapply tractor after the bombs detonate to maximize your team's damage throughout the lengthy damage phase. And as you can see here, we were able to secure a 1-phase kill at -10, but you can easily 2-phase with no problem at all. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. I know a lot of you guys don't have teams to run with, so I'll be streaming Pantheon helps all week long at twitch.tv/above, so make sure to swing on by and try to get some help in the stream. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.